Okay, so I did a little experiment and I was thinking, with AI, why, like my newsletter probably wouldn't even be a thing right now because people don't really need me. They can just plug in whatever they need to do in AI. So I was like, all right, let me do that. I plugged into AI a thing about a garden plan. I'm going to walk you guys through it because I think this is really fascinating and it's a great way to kind of show how AI can work and won't work for you. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So I say I live in Seattle, Washington, and I want to grow food in my backyard. My backyard is on the north side of my house, or north side of my yard, and gets sun from about 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. There's a big tree on the southern horizon that only slightly blocks the sun throughout the day. A lot of gardens that I've seen across Seattle have at some point, even if they have like a full sun, that like inevitably a tree will block something and some of the beds will come in and out of sun. But mostly we can say they have sun on them at least from 10 to 4. That takes away any fences. And like most yards kind of have that sort of thing, unless you have a full shady yard, okay? So that's why I chose to say 10 to 4 and not like 8 to 5. Okay. Big tree on the southern horizon. It only slightly blocks the sun throughout the day. I have two raised beds that measure 4 by 6 feet. Again, very classic shaped bed. We can call them the east bed, meaning there's a bed on the east side of your yard. So as the sun comes up, it's gonna hit the west bed first, right? Because the sun's gonna rise this way and gonna angle this way, so the west bed will get it, the east bed won't. And then vice versa, as the sun sets on the west side, it will pull light onto the east side, and the west side will get blocked a little sooner. You all know that. It's Earth, tilt, sun. We'll call them the east bed and the west bed. And I said, create a chart and a planting calendar for growing food this year, starting today, April 12th. Oops, that's a typo. What can I plant now? When can I expect it to be ready to harvest? And what can I plant behind it? Include notes on general care and maintenance. Include tips on how and when or if to fertilize. And this is what it says to me. So bed, east bed, west bed. In the first bed, we're going to plant lettuce, spinach, radishes, beets, carrots. This is pretty awesome. This is a leaf root crop rotation. So it's taking in crop rotation, even though I didn't actually say anything about that. I don't know if that's intentional or accidental, but it is actually doing it. And it's something I would often recommend that you do a row of lettuce. And then about 14 inches over, you do a row of another green like spinach. And then in between those, you can plant your root vegetable. That's a really like intensive gardening technique. And it's great for small spaces. It super maximizes it. And it also, because the plants are taking up so much of the space, it doesn't really leave a lot of space for weeds. So it's great. This is ideal for cool season crops. We're a little bit in the shoulder season of cool season crops. We're moving out of it, but nonetheless great. Rotate with beans or peas in the late summer. That's not totally true. So, peas and beans can go into the ground, but probably July, um, the last 2 weeks of July, and I would not call that late summer. Late summer is September. And you cannot plant peas and beans at the end of September and expect them to flourish in Seattle. So this is a little incorrect, but it's kind of in the ballpark. But you can maybe see like how this would be confusing. Okay, on the west bed, we're also going to plant Swiss chard, kale, broccoli, peas, and potatoes. So this is a little hodgepodge because Swiss chard and kale are leaf vegetables. Broccoli is considered a flower rotation. Peas are considered fruit, and potatoes are tubers that I would never ever recommend to plant in an annual bed because they take up a ton of space and they're kind of one of those things like once you plant potatoes, you're going to have potatoes in that spot forever, and it's just best to kind of keep them in the same place. So I didn't love that suggestion. Let's see what else they say. It goes on to say planting and harvest calendar, so it gives you some crops, and when you plant them, this is basically all early April, mid-April, right? This is pretty true. Some notes, these are not of particular interest, prefers cooler temperatures, thrives in partial shade, yada yada. All right, I mean, that's fine. I don't know that anyone would take these into consideration when they were planting their garden. I feel like you would just plant it and pray. a little plant and pray, not really like worrying about these notes. I certainly would never recommend anyone get too bothered about trying to accommodate this section. And then it gives harvest times. Sure. I mean, lettuce in 30 days, I don't really think I've ever seen that happen. Maybe like little lettuces. Nothing really goes that fast. Radishes do produce in like 25 to 30 days, and then the rest of this will basically match what's on the back of the seed packet. I did ask, you may recall, to include notes of general care and maintenance and tips on how, when, and if to fertilize. And it says soil prep before planting, amend your soil with compost to improve fertility and structure. That's kind of true. Not all compost is created equal. If you've been following my newsletter for a number of years or anything that I'm writing, you know that a lot of times the compost, live compost that introduces really healthy microbes into your soil is wonderful. Dead compost that's just sort of like something to um, lift the soil or add some lightness is another conversation for another time. Let me know if you want to have it. Fertilization. Apply a balanced organic fertilizer at planting, and again 3 weeks after seedlings emerge. It looks like they've noted this information from Swanson's. That's pretty cool. Great. Apply some balanced organic fertilizer at planting, and again 3 weeks after seedlings emerge. That's pretty solid advice. And I would recommend just like your all-purpose organic fertilizer. I really like Waltz actually out in Interbay. They're my favorite fertilizer company and is a small business, so you should support them. Swanson's is also a small business, so you can, I mean, in the grand scheme of the world, Swanson's is a small local business as well. Watering deeply once a week. That's crazy talk. You have to water every day. Just a little tiny wee bit when the seeds are going, and when if you seed a bed and you're not using starts, I always recommend putting over floating row cover, which is a thin poly sheet. It will lock in the moisture. Use mulch to retain moisture. We don't usually have that problem in Seattle, so I have never really used mulch. Maybe in June I'll introduce mulch around some of the plants, but not really. Mulch does suppress weeds. Anything you lay on top of your soil will suppress weeds for a certain amount of time, not indefinitely. But if you plant intensively, like I noted earlier, then you won't have that. Mulch does help regulate soil temperatures. We don't really get big spikes of temperature in the Pacific Northwest. It's not like it's, 60 in the morning and then 98. And so we don't really have to worry about that there. Pest management, encourage beneficial insects like ladybugs. Consider using neem oil for pest control. All right. I mean, it doesn't really tell you how to encourage beneficial insects. You do want to plant, use a crop rotation, use a fertility rotation. Those are always good things. Have flowers nearby. You want some things that flower, you want some things that don't. You just want a variety of plants. And succession planting. After harvesting early crops like lettuce or radishes, replant with warm season crops such as beans or cucumbers. True! So lettuce is a leaf rotation, radish is a root rotation, leaf, root, flower, fruit. And right behind that, beans and cucumbers are fruits. And so that's an amazing fertility rotation, which is great. And that's exactly what you would do. You would plant those now, and then once those are done, you would put in your beans and cucumbers. A lot of times they plant like once a year. They plant in May and they kind of do everything. They're one and done. But if you get your spring things in right now, probably at the end of May is when you'll get that kind of second opportunity, and that's when you can plant your cucumbers, your beans, your tomatoes. A lot of times people rush these things. You don't need to. Tomatoes that are planted on May 3rd versus May 31st very rarely produce more or faster or better tomatoes. So it doesn't really, there's not a whole lot of juice from that squeeze. Just plant now, get your spring vegetables in the ground, and then you can worry about your summer things later. It goes on to give you some weather outlook, and there you go. That's the Amy Pennington Go Go Green Garden guide to using ChatGPT for planning your garden. It was pretty okay. I think it assumes you have a lot of information. I think if you wanted to just kind of like give it a whirl and you were a betting person, then this would be pretty decent. It leaves out some kind of like key components, but all in all, if you followed the back of the seed packets and the advice of ChatGPT, you'd probably be reasonably satisfied. If you actually wanted to maximize your yard and really grow food at home and impact your life and make sure that you had a constant flux of healthy, varied food, I'm not sure that this would be a great bet for you. So, um, put notes in the comments if you want. Happy to answer questions. And I hope you guys are having a great kickoff to spring.